Most people have never seen Star Wars. No, really, hear me out. The term may now refer to the franchise as a whole, but before it was retitled A New Hope, Episode 4 in its original medium redefining form was simply called Star Wars. Then, from as early as 1980, George Lucas was tampering with his movies set in that galaxy far, far away, and so what with rejigged dialogue, added subtitles, and lashings of CGI smeared all over the practical masterpieces, comparatively few people have ever seen Star Wars as it once was. Now, everyone knows about the hand-shot first controversy, the CGI gumbo of Jedi rocks, and Hayden Christensen's unnecessary Force ghost, and we've even done a video here at Whatculture on 10 changes that were actually totally justified. But all that is still just the start. There are also countless minor edits that have been made to the films that are so pointless that only the most dedicated fans will even know they're there. With that in mind, I'm Peter from Whatculture.com, and here are the 10 most pointless changes to the Star Wars movies you never even noticed. Number 10, the Jabba's Palace Dug, Return of the Jedi. By the time the 2011 Blu-ray release of the saga came around, pretty much everything tamperable had already been messed with, leading to some of the most banal, pointless changes of all, noteworthy only by their sheer ridiculousness. Case in point, just before Luke enters Jabba's palace in the first act of Episode 6, you can now see a CGI Dug, Sebulba's species, padding across the room, for some reason. What's so special about this guy that he's walking around the palace alone during communal nap time? I feel like the shot would actually make a lot more sense with the sound of a toilet flushing somewhere in the distance as he rounds the corner. The whole thing just sticks out so much and begs context that just doesn't exist. Furthermore, the CGI here is so poor that it genuinely looks like it's been lifted from a fan-made Star Wars animation. Indeed, despite it being so bad and in your face, the reason we've got this marked as a change you might not have noticed is that it's so obtuse and irrelevant to the context of the scene. A casual fan would be forgiven for thinking this must be an original feature, as it looks so dated and adds so little to the sequence that it couldn't possibly have been inserted deliberately 28 years later. Except it was. Number 9, Vader's shuttle, The Empire Strikes Back. Towards the wrap-up of the original version of Empire, Darth Vader, a bit perturbed that Lucas slipped through his fingers, angrily storms out of Cloud City and growls for his troops to bring my shuttle. The next time we see him, he's back in the Executor, ready to ensnare the damaged Millennium Falcon. However, Lucas clearly thought that Vader demanding his troops fetch his shuttle and later being seen on his Super Star Destroyer just didn't make clear enough what he'd just done, i.e. fly from Bespin, through the sky, into space, and up to his Star Destroyer in the shuttle he just asked the troops to bring. To remedy this for us moronic viewers who totally need our hands holding, in 2011, George Lucas helpfully added in a pointless sequence detailing his Imperial shuttle flying from Bespin up to the carrier, in amongst the thrilling rescue of Luke. Like, literally hard cuts from one sequence to the other, back and forth, mid-dogfight. It's a totally unnecessary scene, filling the audience in on something they already knew and interrupting the flow of a great part of the movie. Why did he do this? Number 8, the KRAYT Dragon Calls, A New Hope. According to Ben Kenobi, the Sand people are easily startled, and I think he's probably correct about that, not least because he personally has frightened them away with no less than 3 different noises over the years. To start with, let's listen to the second version of his startling sound that was used in the 2004 DVD release. Ooh, a ghostly whistle. It's interesting and eerie for sure, but given that this is meant to be an imitation of a creature called a KRAYT dragon, the giant skeleton of which we see as 3PO traverses the Tatooine desert, something with more of a growl might have been better, maybe? Something like, oh, I don't know, the original sound effect used in 1977. How about that one? But hey, no worries, the 2004 whistling wasn't around for long, as our friend George updated it again for the Blu-ray release, and it was quite something. The KRAYT Dragon Call, ladies and gentlemen, a howler monkey on a karaoke machine. Number 7, Slave One's Pursuit, The Empire Strikes Back. While The Empire Strikes Back is comparatively light on retroactive changes, it's not without some pretty ruinous adjustments. Chief among them is a CGI slot of Slave One tailing the Millennium Falcon that was added into the scene where Han evades the Imperials by hiding his piece of junk as a piece of junk. It's a short moment, but the extra focus in a pretty slight scene greatly reduces the tension around the gang's presumed escape and subsequent bombshell that they've been successfully tracked. Worse than that though, Boba is shown following so close behind the Millennium Falcon that it seems Han's already got some preemptive hibernation blindness or something. What is going on here? Number 6, Eyebrows, Return of the Jedi. Poor Sebastian Shaw. His role in Return of the Jedi as the unmasked Darth Vader may have been pivotal, but tragically it's been gradually weakened over the years since release. Most notable, of course, as we've already mentioned, is his replacement by Hayden Christensen as a Force ghost. Lucas's subsequent defense that this was the last light-side version of Anakin that lived completely passes by Vader's last-minute redemption, which is the point of the saga, a moment that he'd already messed with in a wholly more bizarre way. Welcome to Eyebrowgate. When Georgie Porgy realised that if Anakin was burnt alive, he'd probably be totally bald, it was off with the brows. Just like that. I mean, I don't dispute that his underlying reasoning for this makes sense, but it's just such a minor detail that it was hardly worth the effort, especially when there are some far more glaring continuity errors out there that were never fixed. Number 5, Can You Speak BOCCE? Return of the Jedi. The various alien languages of Star Wars were originally little more than phonetically linked gibberish. In the years since first release, however, the expanded universe has turned them into fully fleshed out forms of speech. However, none of this mattered when Episode 6 was first released, as the confrontation between Jabba and Leia, disguised as Boushh, was conveyed entirely by C-3PO's translation, with the two key parties talking in incomprehensible Hutties and Ubis respectively. However, in the special edition, subtitles were added to the alien dialogue because, maybe Lucas thought he'd not already messed with Jabba's palace enough. I don't know. It's a weird thing to have done to a conversation that was already easy to follow by its very nature. There's an interpreter standing right there who translates the meaning of the phrases almost word for word. For that reason alone, while this might be a small change, it's definitely a pointless one. Number 4, The Air Taxi, The Phantom Menace. It's not just the original trilogy that suffered some copious after-the-fact changes. Each one of the prequels was subject to alterations after their original release too, and by far the most extensive were those in The Phantom Menace. For starters, the film's Muppet version of Yoda was made into CGI in order to match episodes 2 and 3, and there were also huge chunks added to the Boone to Eve pod race, which I actually quite enjoyed. One of the weirder changes though was the unexpected addition of the Coruscant taxi segment, dragging out one of the more throwaway scenes, presumably just to show off the special effects or something. A couple of lines by Jar Jar and a few extra shots of Coruscant are all that Lucas added, and thus there's absolutely no impact on the film as a whole. If anything, this change only serves to slow the pacing in that moment and extend the already unpopular film. I mean, I actually think episode 1 is sort of okay, apart from a few major bum notes, but that's a whole different argument. Whichever camp you're in, this did not need to be done. Number 3, Where's Wolfman? A New Hope. Lucas shot a lot more material for the Mos Eisley Cantina scene than was used in the final cut, and there are images online of some of the crazier looking patrons who never really got their close-up, including a giant praying mantis who was hidden way off in the distance on the right side of the bar. However, the true tragedy here is the story of Arlyle Shoes, known unofficially as Wolfman. Despite this lovely headshot of him in the original release of A New Hope, the Angel of Death that was the special edition claimed him as yet another victim of editing, whereupon he was replaced by this. Okay? It can only be presumed that Lucas thought this guy looked a little too goofy and needed omitting from the film, except he's still in the background of that very first shot of the cantina interior, so why did this need to be swapped out? It didn't, is the correct answer. Interestingly, what some fans don't realise is that while this shot also underwent editing to remove the wolfy-looking creature therein, this is actually a separate character known as Lak Sivrak, who was featured in his own expanded universe book, One Last Night in the Mos Eisley Cantina, The Tale of the Wolfman and the Lamproid. What a mouthful. So again, a Wolfman removed from one shot, but not retconned outright. Weird. Pointless. Number 2, Blinking Ewoks, Return of the Jedi. The Ewoks aren't exactly the most popular feature of the original trilogy. In fact, they're about as close as you get pre-1999 to the sort of clangers Lucas would eventually drop in the prequel trilogy. So what could be done to fix these despicable little teddies, thought George when it came to putting out the Blu-ray version? Well, by adding eyelids, of course. Wow. Now they'll like them. I mean, what is this, really? It's literally a case of blink and you'll miss it. I don't for 1 second dispute that it adds a little bit of life to Warwick Davis's Wicket, but only when you watch the two versions side by side. Without the comparison, you'd never know anything had been altered. Good job, Lucas. And number 1, R2's Rock, A New Hope. This is R2-D2, sitting in a cave. The sand people he's trying to hide from are very much distracted by the unconscious Luke and his speeder, so he's probably not going to get spotted. "Except he is," cried George Lucas one 2011 morning. "What was I thinking, not putting an extra rock in front of him, so close to the other rock that he's hiding behind, that the gap between them is actually too small for him to have fit through there in the first place."
What?
This infamous change to 1977 Star Wars encapsulates everything wrong with George Lucas's original trilogy changes. It doesn't look especially convincing, it tears a gaping hole in the scene's continuity, and worst of all, the scene worked totally fine without it. This was pointless. And breathe. Wow, so that's our list, but let us know what else you think we could have included by commenting below. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe as always, and you can come and chat with me about Star Wars and anything else you like on my Twitter @ThatPeterAustin. I'm Peter from Whatculture.com, and I'll see you soon.